right, Khuloud, I want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you.
All right, so we are in a new normal environment, and I want to introduce you to the broader audience that follows me and the CIOs on this community. And I'm particularly interested in you sharing with my audience about digital transformation. And so why don't we start out though, how did you get involved with the Urban Institute? How did you get involved? How did you ascend to the place you're at right now? And just go a couple years back and tell me how you got to where you are right now.
Sure, I'm happy to share that. I'm currently the VP of Technology and Data Science at Urban Institute and Chief Information Officer. And the title of VP in Technology and Data Science is actually an updated title that I gained exactly now 2 years ago at a milestone of our digital transformation. I joined Urban in 2014, so it's been 6 years now, with the mission to really do a digital transformation of Urban. And Urban Institutes, for those who maybe don't know it, is a recognized leader in the field of social and economic policy research based in Washington, D.C. So the work that Urban does is definitely relevant and significant in informing the debate on social and economic policy. It's based on rigorous research and evidence, and aspire, of course, to move the needle on the debate around policy and make sure we continue with upward mobility and prosperity for all. So joining an organization with such a long history and capital of impact in the world of policy was kind of a challenge and also a big opportunity to contribute to something that is so impactful. Before joining Urban, I worked in the international development sector. I led also digital transformation in international development organizations. So joining Urban was the first time I joined an organization where the mission not just has such an impact on society, but impacts almost me personally, impacts my health and tax and everything that is happening in the country. So it brought it kind of very close as a mission to be part of it. And when I learned about the challenges that Urban had over the years, Urban was known to be ahead of its game in terms of applying computational science and developing microsimulation models to really predict policy scenarios. So Urban historically was ahead of the curve compared to many other research organizations in those areas. But over the years, with underinvesting in technology and not necessarily catching up, the organization found itself in a situation where the potential is great, the impact is even could be greater if we accelerate and modernize and let's say leverage the new technologies ahead of us. So that was kind of what made the job appealing for me. The more challenges they shared with me, the more I got excited about the job. And another thing that excited me really about the work was the new leader who took the role of Urban leadership a couple of years before I joined, Sarah Rosenwortel. She was the new president for Urban, and she had a wonderful vision for where she wanted to really take the organization and amplify its impact. So she believed in really the impact of the organization, and she also believed that we could do way more with technology and data. And it was time for Urban to really become again the leader in applying computational science and technology the way it started in the 70s and 80s. So that's how I got on my journey with Urban Institute 6 years ago. And we did a major digital transformation on all aspects. Everything needed to be modernized and transformed, or whatever you want to call it, from the basic technology services to the infrastructure to security, and of course, most importantly, the research technology component, which is the core of what Urban does. So that has been my journey over these 6 years. It was a different challenge than the one I had working in international development for a number of reasons. The first one was having my entire team being around me in the same floor. As a start, I was used to working with international organizations where my team is either spread across the world, or I was used to take my calls at 11 p.m. or very early in the morning to accommodate Asia time zone and other time zones. So for me, kind of being in an organization where everybody, all your constituents are in the same building and your team was definitely made the journey very different. And while I led digital transformation in 3 organizations now, I would say by far, and they all have been dear to my heart and speak to my passion to technology and its potential in lifting organizations and communities and societies. I would say my journey at Urban has been the closest to my heart for so many reasons that we can talk more about them.
So let's start with the digital transformation and the leader, Sarah. Sarah, right? Sarah's the
Yes, Sarah.
What is the vision? Like we talk a lot about transformation, but it's funny the vision of the leader that I guess has been approved by the board but there, if I remember talking to you several months ago, it's a very compelling, dynamic vision. I'd love for you to share that, and then I have some other follow-on questions for that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, the vision is that in a policy organization, in a policy research organization, and in a fast-changing world, kind of you contributing to kind of how you really continue to inform policies the way they are made, how you continue to focus on facts and evidence and not necessarily ideologies. The more things are kind of, we see how things are manifesting in our society today, the role of evidence and rigor and facts matter in everything. And Sarah's vision from the beginning has been how you really amplify and take the evidence and the rigor and make sure you contribute and continue to contribute knowledge to address key questions in today's world, which is what would it take to, ensure economic mobility? What would it take to work with governments and state and local and all levels to really advance prosperity for all and equity? So the vision started with that Urban has a great, I would say, capital of researchers and experts and evidence and methods. And it had the potential to reach even more and make more impact towards these critical questions about equity and economic mobility. And for that to happen, it needs a strong organization on the operational level and the infrastructure. So she saw an integral part for solid infrastructure and operations and the role of technology, of course. She also, part of that vision was the importance of engagement and visibility and engaging with different audience and making the evidence and the research accessible and understood by many stakeholders and many what we call them today change makers, not just the policy decision maker, but also the communities, the journalists, the other researchers, etc. So that was also part of definitely that vision, and how we continue to emphasize the importance of evidence-based policy decision making and evidence-based program interventions, how we continue to emphasize that evidence. And part of that vision, as I said, that was exciting for me, is her seeing the the role that technology, both on the operation side and on the research methods and data side. So she was definitely a big visionary and a big ally, and so that the role for technology being part of accelerating and driving this forward.
So part of the data science part of this, which is one of your passions, I know, was the, and we've seen the impact in society recently with facts and evidence and our ability to amplify inaccurate information is stunning. Like our ability as a society through our different channels to amplify the bad and to amplify the good and the bad, and I can see where you need to get the evidence. So how did data science, and also it's interesting, the speed, like it seems like the ability to do like these long legacy projects, it doesn't seem to match our modern culture. So I'm wondering how our thirst for information and our thirst for knowledge is very fast because we can speak into a phone and just get a lot of data. So how did you reconcile that and think through that process?
I think that was the key thing to start with kind of, if you want to harness the power of technology and data, and we know in today's world it's changing, and innovations in technology, a number of other factors are definitely changing. We are living in a fast changing world on all levels. And to be able for an organization like Urban to be relevant and timely and provide the insights and the recommendations, let's say in today's world, in today's situation under COVID, how quickly can you really provide recommendations for policymakers who need to make decisions today on a stimulus package, or what will be the long-term implications of housing and rental, etc. And that's what the type of work that Urban is built for. So how can you really be that agile as an organization, but also keep the rigor and the quality? Because sometimes just leveraging any data you have around you doesn't mean using the wrong data. And as you mentioned, we live in a world where also wrong data is being amplified and used. So sometimes it's more harmful to use wrong data just to be fast compared to relatively available, the best data available around you, but at least with a certain level of quality and method and rigor behind it to the table. So going back to kind of the challenge with let's say a traditional research to really have the quality of the record is of course the methods take time, because you want to wait for data to be collected over years, etc. Urban, for example, we used to build micro-simulation model that maybe analyze one scenario at a time or a couple of scenarios. And as policy and challenges become more complex, that means you cannot be just reactive to one proposal at a time or two proposals. You have to find a way where we could be proactive with that evidence and find ways to maybe be more outcome driven. Like, what's really the outcome you hope to achieve with a certain policy, and then amplify and scale your market simulation and analysis and use cloud and hundreds of machines and maybe analyze hundreds of hypothetical scenarios and identify the scenario that is more likely to get you to that outcome. And that becomes your recommendation to a policy maker rather than being reactive to one or two possibilities. And the third one is, of course, how you really make the evidence understood and accessible by decision makers, by different stakeholders. We all know that having a report of 200 pages and tables is very hard, even for a policymaker to understand. So how you make it accessible, how you also democratize access to this data and evidence for multiple entities and stakeholders to really make use of that information, from, as I said, a community organization to a researcher to a journalist investigating a certain policy, an advocacy group, even to individuals. Like, as an individual, how can you really benefit from a rigorous analysis an organization like Urban does, and how can we make this information and those decision tools accessible? So that's how those were kind of the challenges with, let's say, a traditional way. And what we've been trying to do with the data science team and the technology team is focusing on how we can use technology to remove barriers. First of all, how can we really leverage new methods of technology and harvest new types of data? Unlock the power of data that is a little bit more real time, that in a traditional research process, you cannot wait 2 years to get data or to get the next census, etc. This is, of course, a golden standard data resources for researchers and for their method. But sometimes you need to do with the best data available, especially, for example, in a situation like COVID. How quickly can you know where which communities are hit most? Where is the unemployment? So you can then inform policy decision makers and local governments who are working on response to really target and make sure you are really responding in time for that. So that's where the data science team and the technology team have been really working to help. For example, with web scraping, harvesting data from the web in a secure, of course, compliant and legal way, but also harvest new types of data like social media or other sources of data that maybe might be in a newspaper, in a PDF, how you can harvest it and translate it, and maybe even create new data sets using new techniques like machine learning and text analysis, and provide data sets that researchers could do something with and could be relevant. And as I said, best available at the moment. So you allow for a more timely respond, a more relevant respond. And of course, if there is, you always want what we call it, the trusted source or the trusted kind of entity that have the rigor of the method, have the principles of kind of what data is acceptable, and is transparent also about what data we used, how this analysis, and that's what you find in a place like Urban that takes all of these issues very seriously around methods, transparency, and quality of data, and being transparent about them.
So transformation, is this something that is people driven as well? I mean, if like if you had to do a 0 to 10 scale, like, okay, I need great people and I need great technology. Is it a question of either or you need more great technology than more great people, or you need a couple really great superstars of people and they can do with adequate technology?
Well, my philosophy and approach to digital transformation, especially in a nonprofit organization and in an impact-driven organization, is that you have to be people-driven and you have to be purpose-driven and you have to be problem-driven, not technology-driven. Technology, for me, technology is there, and I'm almost kind of without hesitation, when anybody asks me, like, is there I was like, I bet you there's a technology that could do this, but let's not start there. It's way more important to be driven by the impact of the organization. And that was the main driver for our digital transformation journey at Urban. And the framework I adopted in leading the digital transformation at Urban is something called lean transformation or lean practices. And the reason I actually picked lean compared to other, there are many theories and methods out there. I'm sure many CIOs have their, pros and cons. For me, the reason I picked lean is because it's people focused, and it's all about, you cannot really successfully transform without investing in your people and without investing in creating a team that is on all levels, from the most junior to the highest senior, empowered to solve problems day to day, and have your most principle of lean is also you are delivering value to your customers. And the translation of that for us in the nonprofit world, value means purpose, means impact. So everything that my team does, they know that it's contributing to Urban's value and creating value to Urban, which is impact and informing, of course, sound policy decisions. So that was kind of the foundation for the digital transformation that we had. So I would say people are at the center of it. And for me, technology is always there, but I have first to start with people.
And then I think you also mentioned you leaned into design thinking
Yes.
with
And
one of your recent efforts, right? And
yes, design thinking, which is very interesting because it's also very compatible, almost the same principles of lean, because lean is very people focused, is all about respect for people, respecting their capability and investing in them, and also delivering value for your customers, which is like you built for what the customers need, not what you imagine they need. And that's something where design thinking is very, very aligned with lean. They're almost, I would say, the same school of thought. With design thinking, it's all about bringing diverse voices, bringing different people together and build with your customer and build having the empathy and understanding what your customer need, what your community needs. So yeah, actually, this is a new experiment we started for Urban and for my team, the tech and data. In light of COVID, we urban researchers have been focusing on the racial equity implications of COVID in terms of both its impact on communities and how much lack of data we have around how it's impacting certain communities, and the racial disparity in even the response and recovery. So when they had this focus area, we decided, because we needed to act quickly and find ways where are the data gaps around the racial equity, how quickly can we deliver something. So we proposed to do an experiment. So we decided to pilot design thinking, which is something my team and I have been trying to build some capacity around it in the past for how we want to approach developing technology and data solutions for using design thinking approach. So we did an experiment and we brought together researchers, technologists, the communication team, the business development team, data scientists, of course. But because also we had to run it quickly as an experiment, we could not have the actual, what we call them, change makers. And so we had a few folks from our leadership team played a proxy. They spoke to the voice of community organizations that they work with, or the local and state policy decision makers, because they interact with them. And some spoke about, engagement. So we did that experiment over 3 very condensed sessions, and it was fascinating for me how the engagement and just having everybody kind of thinking together of the challenge that we put together for the group, and coming up with creative ideas, vetting the ideas, how much does the idea meet what we hear the need is. And then now, as a result of this experiment, we identified 2 pilots where we're going to be jointly, the tech and data team, the communication team, and the researchers team, they're going to be jointly implementing what you call it, an MVP or an MLP, or a first release of some of the solutions. And that was a fascinating experience, kind of the level of collaboration and innovation and speed. Like for everybody, when we said that in 2 weeks we're going to deliver something, was very empowering for everybody. And I think starting that conversation, and we call it at the design phase of a program, a research program area, or a body of work, or in what I like to call it the first mile, not the last mile, because sometimes we think of technology during the last mile. But the fact that how you really think in your first mile on the journey, how technology could help you actually shape even the ideas that people thought about. So that I'm optimistic now. I'm really excited. And I hear from my colleagues, they're asking, okay, so when is the next sprint? When is the next iteration? Because our promise to them was that this is an experiment, but it's going to continue. It's going to be iterative. And every time we're going to explore and bring new voices and iterate. So as I said, we're trying to capture the lessons learned and hopefully come out of it with a new way for us to work and act, especially once we go back to the new norm. I imagine this to become the way the tech and data team is going to continue to partner and work with research to accelerate and unlock data and allow us to really do faster work with quality measures as well.
Well, it's great to see how you launched with lean methods and one, like, I'm sure you're still using them, but to do the major chunks of this whole transformation, and then you're continually experimenting with how do you facilitate speed and accuracy and accelerating. I love that word, unlocking data. Because it's the world we live in. It's like, but also the people working collaboratively, facilitating speed, which is really quite interesting because we always usually associate speed with the tech, not necessarily with.
Yes, and of course, speed sometimes for people is scary because speed might mean, in the tech world, we're used to speed because this is the way to survive. If you're a technologist, you learn like speed is everything. And of course, in the for-profit sector, speed is everything because it means speed to market and competitiveness, etc. Speed in sometimes when you are in research where quality is important, methods are important. You cannot rush. Any solid researcher will tell you you cannot rush results because you want to be confident. It's about evidence, etc. So it's a fine balance for us to strike to make people, I would say, comfortable with the speed and appreciate. And that's why with this recent collaboration we had with the researchers who are focusing on racial equity was kind of speed is how can we help you respond quickly and find complementing data until you have access to let's say the standards, golden standard type of quality of data. So speed is always need to be in a balance when I can never use the quick and dirty word in ours. It has to be quick, but it has to be quality as well. And honestly, the lean practice within my team, because lean focuses a lot on quality and how you really build in quality and how you continuously improve, kind of made my team understand how important it is to focus on the quality, even when you're doing things in a speedy way. And agility does not mean that you are compromising the quality. Agility means you are removing waste in a process or you're removing inefficiencies, that it complements that agility is actually a way to always and in a quick way maintain high quality. So that I think gave the tech team an advantage, making the speed not so scary because we also value quality, and we keep saying that it's an iterative process. You always continue to improve. You might not get a perfect, let's say, first release or a product, but it's good enough as a starting point. And there's always, by quickly seeing what's working and what's not, you can always improve the quality. That the quality continues to go up and not down, even if you start a little bit at a lower level.
Yeah, it's best to get it out and into the world, and then be able to fine tune it as you go, then come out with something perfect that maybe
Yeah.
potentially might not make it out into the world. So,
Yeah.
well, I really appreciated our time. And I just, is there anything that I've said that triggered something for you that you're like, you know what, I got to make sure I say it before we get off the call? We've covered a couple, really important points about your vision and lean and design thinking and speed and the necessity for accurate data, and quality data. But is there anything that you wanted to get out there that I, either as a message to other CIOs or otherwise that I missed to ask you?
Actually, there is, and maybe this is mainly triggered by or amplified. It's not a new thing, but I think COVID proved the value of technology in any organization. I think I would say it's the best and the worst time to be a CIO at the moment. You are the most valuable. You and your team are the most valuable kind of players in the organization. Really the weight of almost running any business at the moment is really on the shoulders of the technology team. But at the same time, as this gives you really and amplifies really how critical technology today is for any business, any organization, the fact that we are able to run urban fully, like we did not really have a disruption. It was seamless. We continued to operate. I consider our organization one of the lucky ones that we're able to really do our work and deliver. And we did our investment in technology early enough to be in a situation where it's seamless to really switch and not have glitches, not have impact on the productivity of any of our staff. But at the same time, this also, when you see the importance of something existing that is really filling, like you see technology in everything, in education and learning and meetings and happy hours and social and all of that, that makes you it means the absence of that element is very, very impactful. So it makes me think, what does it mean for those who don't have access to that technology? Whether on individual or on a community or a company level, which makes me kind of feel more responsibility now for doing something about digital equity.
Digital equity.
Yes. So that's a message I want to share with my peer CIOs is definitely, like, if there's something I want to focus on is what's our role as technologists in ensuring digital equity.
Yeah, and I think that the role of the CIO has never been more important because it spans all departments and certainly help facilitate a vision. It can help facilitate the power of thinking beyond just the internal users of the organization, but like thinking from a very, very big perspective. What is the mission and how can we deliver impact? Now, in the nonprofit world, impact is the measuring tool, but the for-profit world, they're also impacting customers, and that has that can have a big impact that the CIO can bring there with the technology. So I appreciate that digital equity, and I might also say that I think working from home, I think a lot of people have been celebrating working from home, but I also know that from raising children and the fact that we have a deep disrespect for schooling systems, because the schooling systems essentially take our kids off of our hands for large chunks of the year. And also for teachers, because most moms and dads have turned into homeschooling supervisors over the past. So even if they have the technology, now, they're now they're like doing roles that they didn't sign up for. Like I finished school now, so it's a really interesting. I have the capability to work from home, but holy mackerel, I wasn't expecting that I was going to have to teach my kids at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's making everybody, value those roles that we thought, oh, technology can solve everything, and like it's like, no, there's nothing. The role of a teacher is not just in, yes, you can get the material online, etc., but the role of a teacher is way bigger and deeper and more important. So yeah, I think we're going to get out of COVID with appreciation for a lot of these kind of certain roles that we thought the technology could replace or the machine could replace. I think out of this, we're going to revisit and rethink AI and machine role in our life. As much as we're going to really like technology, and I think technology, kept economies running in this world, but at the same time, it's I think it opened our eyes on the importance of human in all of this situation, and the role of human empathy and human understanding and interaction in certain ways. Even if the machine does it, it's not necessarily the way it should be. So I'm actually looking forward to see researchers and analytics on AI and the future of work and the future of human and machine. I suspect that people are going to come back with a little bit different perspective, and hopefully with more appreciation for the role of some of the soft human skills
Well,
that
you're
we
absolutely
all
right.
need.
You said that with these virtual happy hours and all these
Mm-hmm.
attempts at social interaction. Well, that, as cool as it sounds, you're absolutely right. It means that there's an absence of something that
Yeah,
is a natural, like, human desire to want to
yeah.
interact, and there's just no replacing. I know you probably pulled this whole design thinking thing off remotely, right? You pulled it off.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing, because I'm a pure whiteboard person. Like, I love my
Yep.
whiteboards. And I'm sure, there's a big chunk of a lot of us that just love the collaboration and being in the same
Mm-hmm.
room with people.
Yep.
But holy moly.
Yeah. And it was a big challenge for me in particular because we've been doing lean for a long time with my team, and doing a lot, when you have a lean environment, you have sticky notes everywhere, which, so
Right,
it was, yeah. And you have your, boards and flow and all of these and KPIs, etc., that you don't see. And I have been trying to adapt to digital lean tools, but it's not the same experience as standing with somebody in front of the board. But I would say we managed. We're kind of
Yep.
creative and keeping people focused. And so yeah, I think that's the other thing when everybody is in this together. So it's kind of it did not give us an option to be like half on site, half remote, which sometimes our meetings are like that, and it makes it a challenge and you feel you're not paying attention to the person on the screen or on the phone. And
Sure.
but now that you're all in the same, it leveled, I would say, the ground. I've noticed an increased openness and willingness to really learn and try, and kind of it made people less I would say even more relaxed about participating, and just feel like, okay, I'm not on stage, I'm not so I feel it has its advantages, but definitely I do miss my whiteboards and my sticky notes.
Well, Khuloud, I really appreciate your time with me and my audience, and which is your peers. So there's a lot to learn here, and I can't wait to publish it and get it out into the world. And there's quite a lot of wisdom that you're able to share with me today, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Bill, for doing this, and I look forward to learn more from my peers and your other guests. It's great to see you, and hopefully you'll stay safe, and hopefully we'll be back to, I would say, a new normal, not necessarily better or worse, but it's a new one.
It will be new, and we'll have lessons learned in the process. We're a resilient
Yeah.
species for sure, and we'll learn from this and move along.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Take care,
Thanks.
Khuloud.
Bye. Have a great day. Bye.